I think hiccups are good luck. They help make sure we get those little kinks out ahead of time and hopefully have solved them. We are so happy you're here. Number one piece of good fortune, everyone who registered to read is here, and that doesn't always happen, so yay you. We also had an unexpected pleasure of Carlos Cruz arriving. He doesn't know he's a celebrity, but he is the one who wrote the words that we ended up using for the graphic. So that's pretty great. We're putting him in after Kelly and before Laura. So if you're paying attention to the flow, that's where we're going to squeak them in. As you know, we have the anthology available. Who has already gotten theirs? Okay, good. If you contributed to the anthology, you are given a free copy, and there are more there to purchase, so enjoy those. If you contributed to the online journal, we love your work. It is amazing. So many beautiful pieces. We had a program yesterday online, and I was amazed at the quality of work, the beautiful hearts and souls and language we got to enjoy. I have these little pieces of paper that have the website, so you can read more about the online journal. So I have them in back over there, but it's really easy. It's inlandiajournal.net. Inlandiajournal.net. So be sure to pick one of those up or make a point of remembering it. So as we all now know, the restrooms are open. They're over in the main building over there. We have iced tea, we have lemonade, we have cookies, as you're aware as well. So welcome everyone. We have Nan Friedley to thank for getting us a podium. Where are you, Nan? There she is. Yeah. Yay, Nan! Francis brought this gorgeous thing here. It's a book stand, really. But you can use it to put your writing on here if you want to, or put it here. Take a moment to situate yourself and get comfortable. We have a microphone. I'm projecting. How's my sound in the back? Pretty good? Okay, if you're comfortable projecting, please do that. Turn the mic on if you'd like to use the mic. That's just sliding it up and speaking to the mic. And Ben just ran up and took care of making it sound a little better. Does it sound okay? Ben, can you work any magic with this, Ben? Sorry? Oh, dear. Well, let's do our best, okay? Let's just try and do our best. Now, I saw Katie. There she is. I don't want to start before she's back in the room. Okay. Hey, Katie. We're going to go ahead and get started, but I wanted to give you a chance to get back in the room. So here's the official welcome. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. I always want to call it the Louis Rubidoux Library, but I believe people mostly say Louis. He was an early settler here in Riverside who came from St. Louis. He was a fur trapper and came west on the Old Spanish Trail. Did you know that? And then ended up here and now has a library named after him. We're here for the launch of two publications. The 2021 Writing from Inlandia Anthology and the fall edition of Inlandia, A Literary Journey, where we have this website to take you to. My name is Janine Corroy-Gamblin, and I am the programs coordinator for Inlandia Institute, which is a literary and cultural arts nonprofit based here in inland Southern California. Before we begin, a few words. Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air. The Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. And so, I want to say a couple of introductions before we launch too far into the program. Katie Porter wave at us. That's our executive director right there. That's Mike, who's helping with book sales. He's right there. We have our Kimmy right here helping. She's been with Inlandia for quite a few years, and Kate Johnson, who is here to assist, but also worked on the anthology. And some of you heard this earlier. She was a very important part in organizing and helping Fernanda, who is our publications coordinator and regretfully cannot be here today, and Erin Sweeney, who is the online journal editor, sends her regrets as well. She's rooting for everyone. The Writing from Inlandia Anthology has been published since 2011. It is an Inlandia tradition. I wonder, in the back, everyone?
Be quiet, please. Respect.
They're not hearing us. They're so busy with what they're doing. But Will's on it. Thank you, guys. It is an Inlandia tradition. We've had over 20 creative writing workshops represented in it. The writing workshops are available for free for the most part. We have a few that people can pay, but they're yeah.
Is the mic not working?
We didn't like the sound of it.
Some people can't hear.
I'm so sorry.
Let's
I don't know what to do.
use the mic and I'll adjust the volume.
Well, okay,
Let's
let's
do
give it another try. We did.
All right, how's that? Is that better?
Yes. I'm gonna fix
Okay.
Let's
All right.
Keep talking.
Would it help to move that further from the mic or? Okay, I'll keep going this way, everyone.
Okay.
So this weekend, we're launching both publications over 2 days. We did the online launch yesterday and then the live one here today at the library. So we're going to begin our program today by honoring two beloved Inlandians who passed away over the past year. We have here with us Nan Friedley, who is going to be sharing some memories of Dinah's Coach Builder and reading some of her work and some of Nan's own work. So come on down, Nan. We'll get you set up here. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'm not good at this with the mic thing. How am I doing back in the back? You hear me? Yeah. All right, I'll give them my best. I first met Dinah's at the Riverside Inlandia Writing Workshop in the basement of the library. Some of you know that one. We sat on a mishmash of chairs around long tables, packed together like sardines. We took turns introducing ourselves. When it was Dinah's turn, she shared that she was a retired speech pathologist and principal at a special ed school, had a grandson the same age as mine. We had lots in common. I was trying to figure out what kind of writer I was. She was a poet already, writing about the beauty of nature, her family, and memories of life events. She didn't do Facebook, but we would call or text each other to share poems or just talk. I loved our phone calls and miss them now. I've saved her voicemail so I can remember the sound of her voice. February 8th, it happened. She suffered a massive stroke. I called the hospital to learn more about her, but they just said she was in ICU. So no flowers, no visitors. I was lost. So I did what she would do. I wrote a poem. I'll come back. Miss your voice on the line here. Oh, darling, I was thinking about you. It's been too long. Miss your posted puns, poems you share, drafts too wonderful to edit. Perfect already. Miss your thoughts. What would you think of this little ditty? You be kind. Miss our lunches on your patio, curious cuisine you've made with rice and curry, variety of fun beverages to try. Miss our potluck poetry, sharing our latest, seeing your current painting of delicate horses. You have one more book to finish, more paintings to create, more anthologies to be a part of. Come back, Dee, so we can do it all again. One of the poems Dinah submitted for this year's anthology is The Last Farewell, and ironically, it's a tribute to her father, who passed away November 2006. The Last Farewell by Dinah's Coachbuilder. Farewell Again is a book of poems written by my father, Bonjour Paymaster. The title refers to a poem he wrote for his mother, Tamina, on her demise in January 1950. Farewell! Upon thy grave the sunlight gleams. Oh, would my riven heart could share thy bliss. Farewell, and may thy sleep be free from dreams, if dreams still linger after death's dark kiss. It was September 2006. I was in Mumbai, India, having spent about a month with my father. I had retired early so that I could visit with him more often, as he was elderly now, 94, and living by himself. This had been a difficult stay. He was eating very little, bedridden, and not responding to his environment as he had done before. A close, trusted family friend, Dadi Darwala, visited him every day. He had a competent night nurse and a ward boy trained to work in hospital settings, who met his physical needs during the day. But it was much more. It was his spirit that was subdued. My presence seemed to make a difference over time. His food intake increased, he was alert, enjoyed listening to music, even reading for a while. He had been hospitalized after my arrival and was happy to be back in the comfort of his own home, on his familiar bed, knowing that he was surrounded by the artifacts of metal and ceramics that he had collected over the years, and his very beloved books, which at last counted 9,000. I spent as much time with him as I possibly could. After my morning breakfast and household duties, I would sit beside his bed and read aloud parts of the 3 daily newspapers that arrived every morning, then the favorite classical tapes of his choice, or just listening to him reminisce. The time for me to return to the U.S. was approaching. This time, I would be flying back within 2 months, as my son Sarvan had chosen to get married with his grandfather present in Mumbai in December. I was to be finalizing the arrangements by returning to Mumbai soon from the U.S. That day, I had shared segments of the daily news with him as I relaxed in an easy chair close by. His eyelids were closed, covered with a dark folded handkerchief to shade his sensitive eyes. His breathing was even, but I knew he was not asleep. The following incident occurred, described in my poem. Parting at 94. I'm so sorry you're going, he said. Oh, I'll be back soon, I spoke. His words and mine curled up into the air and embraced. I gazed at my father's closed eyes and read the pages of his soul. Silently his soul breathed. I'll miss you. Hurriedly his heart beat. I love you. His lips lay silent. Hang on. I used to phone my dad from the U.S. twice or thrice during the week. On my last phone call, as usual, I ended with, I love you, Dad. His last words to me were, I love you, darling. He said his last farewell to this world the next day, Sunday. It was that November in 2006.
Thank you so much, Nan. We very much missed Dinas today. I believe it does help to have the microphone. We placed it there, so hopefully we're getting a little more volume to the back. Our next presenter is Frances Vasquez, who will be sharing her thoughts and paying tribute to Roberto Murillo. Thank you, Frances.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm sharing with you a
tribute in memory of Roberto Tex Murillo. Esteemed community leader and Inlandia supporter, Roberto Tex Murillo passed away on May 29 of this year in Riverside. Roberto distinguished himself for his commitment and advocacy for social justice and education equity, particularly on behalf of his beloved Casablanca barrio. He served on the Casablanca Community Action Group and was a founding member of CAG's Education Advisory Committee. He participated in Tesoros de Cuentos creative writing workshop that I coordinated at the Salvador J. Lara Casablanca Library. Roberto earned an honorary PhD from UCB, the University of Casablanca. I valued our friendship and collaborations. He challenged my curiosity, my intellect. In his youth, Roberto marched and protested during the Movimiento and through his statewide affiliation with the Brown Berets. As a cultural warrior for social justice, he was motivated by the injustices committed against Chicanos. He channeled much of his anger in his writings and by community activism and getting into really good trouble. Many refer to Roberto as Casablanca's historian, who documented the storied history of Casablanca and its residents. He was a regular in the local history section of the Riverside Main Library, where he conducted research. The trajectory of his work changed the day a librarian, Ruth McCormick, gave him a copy of a July 12, 1911 local newspaper report on the Riverside School Board proceedings held the evening before. It mentioned two unnamed women from Casablanca who presented a petition requesting that a school be built in the neighborhood. It became Roberto's quest to identify the two women activists from Casablanca. And that's where I came in to help. Roberto's research findings inspired him to write Casablanca en Huelga, to encourage unity in the community and to motivate residents to vote. This true story of triumph and hope describes how voters in 1946 got rid of an ineffectual city council member who neglected Casablanca constituents. Roberto's mantra, by working together in unity, the community can tip the balance of power. The story was published in the 2018 Writings from Inlandia. He subsequently financed and self-published Huelga and included lots of pictures and illustrations. I brought a copy to share. Roberto believed, let me digress. He wrote poetry, primarily in Spanish, the language of his golden heart. Two poems, En la sombra del águila and Pastor, were published in the 2020 Writings from Inlandia. Roberto believed that the real tesoros de Casablanca were gente, the people in the community of his beloved Casablanca. Roberto would say, there are no greater treasures than the ones held in the heart. De todo corazón, esteemed amigo, rest in power and peace. Gran tesoro de Casablanca. Roberto Murillo, presente. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. And so, the Anthology and online journal reading now begins. We are happy to get going with this, and we'd like to invite Ben Simmons up to the front. Ben contributed to the Anthology. He is from Ireland. He writes poetry and short fiction and has been published regularly in Ireland and the UK. He was selected for Poetry Ireland's Introduction Series and other honors, and he lives in Riverside, California. We're glad to have you here today, Ben. Thank you.
Great thanks to Amandia for the workshops. They were very kind and welcoming when I arrived here. And I'm going to start reading an extract from a short story. This story, I suppose, is for anyone who's had a job that has made them feel ashamed of themselves. So it's called It's an Easy Life. I held the small brown cube of sugar in a teaspoon and watched the crystals swell like little tears and dissolve. The kitchen's electric hum settled in the background. I didn't want to be there. I never liked just sitting in a stranger's house. It was the part of the job I hated the most, just sitting there. The dusty lampshade hanging above my head gave the kitchen the color of milky tea. On the table, there was a ceramic fruit bowl, 2 linen placemats, and a small clock. I stared at the clock as I waited. Behind the clock's hand was a faded portrait of a sheepdog circled by numbers. It made me angry just looking at it, watching the minute hand roll past the dog's ear. I was out of the city. I didn't normally work outside of the city. I can't remember why I was there. The regular agent was sick, maybe? Keane always told me that I would do well in the country. Do well in Newbridge, he said. They're your kind of people out there, country people, he told me. Newbridge isn't the country really, but any place I'd say city, there'd be dragons. I had left my lunch in the office, so I was hungry. At the other end of the kitchen, the lady was chopping mushrooms and onions. The dull click of the knife mixed with the clock's tick. The kitchen was homey, and the walls held 3 elegant paintings that leaned forward from long masonry nails. She wasn't a wealthy woman. There were traces of decay around the place, chips on the teacups you'd feel on your lips before you saw them, the yellowing, white-painted walls. My guess was that the kitchen was the only warm room in the house. She cut the onions in the thick rings and placed them onto a plate of flour before resting them on a sheet of baking paper on the counter beside her. Each time she pressed the blade downward, her body shifted from left to right, then back again. She wore a pair of old jeans and a brown jumper, a husband's maybe. I didn't think it was her jumper. Even though the sleeves were rolled up, her arms were completely covered. She paused to wipe the tears gathering under her puffy eyes. Sorry, this makes me feel like a fool, she said. I don't mind, I said. I rearranged the brochure and the contract on the table in front of me. Her name was Yvonne Brown. She was 56 years old and declared that a friend had told her about the company rather than an advertisement. They always ask these things now. This was my last house call of the day. I knew that I'd spent longer in the house than was recommended, but it was raining outside. There was nothing about rain in the company handbook. The kitchen was filling with steam. It was making me tired. Mrs. Brown placed the cook's knife on the counter, dropped 6 halved potatoes into a pot of boiling water resting on the stove. Each potato splashed in the water, displacing the bubbling water onto the gas flames. They send you out in all weathers. You're like the postman. I don't have a van, I said. She laughed slowly and walked toward me, drying her hands on a worn tea towel tucked into her belt. She winced with each squeeze, and her eyes narrowed on the contract. The table rocked gently on the tile floor as she sat. I readjusted the paperwork, marking the signature line with a small cross. Without hesitation, she scribbled her name across the line. It's a good deal, she said. I made an appointment yesterday, and they sent you straight out. I hope they pay you well for coming all the way out here. Together, we went through what she was signing, and I explained that she could change her mind in the next 10 days. As I pointed to the small square of text, she tilted her head toward the doorway. Mrs. Brown's eyes narrowed again. I knew she was waiting for somebody. Are you okay? I asked. In the short silence, her eyes closed. I felt bad sitting there in this woman's house, and she was being nice to me for no reason. I was just selling her something she could get over the phone. She wasn't looking at the contract anymore. Her eyes opened again. They were blue eyes and terrified, like she saw a child go under a bus, just for a flash, the lines on her face, and her eyes aligned for a moment in a memory of something, a terrible thing. I followed her gaze to the small table filled with family photographs. If now isn't a good time, I can just leave the contract with you. You can finish it over the phone. We resumed our silence again, and I drained the cooling tea from the cup. The rush of sweetness filled my mouth.
Beautiful, yes, thank you so much. Our next reader is Dave Gamboa. Dave contributed to the online journal. He's an indie writer who has published 4 books to date. He loves detective stories with a paranormal element, which I do too, Dave, and is currently working on a mystery ghost story. So, may I present Dave Gamboa. Okay, I'll turn it off. Here we go.
Okay, I'm Dave, and this is my paranormal mystery story titled The Girl in the Rain. It is a flash fiction story, okay? So, here goes. Don't know what happened on that one stormy night. It all happened here at the Moonlighters Bar in downtown Los Angeles. I was having another shot of vodka when Mauricio, the bartender, suggested I go home and sleep it off. Don't ruin yourself, Sebastian. It's not worth it, he advised. But he didn't know the truth of it all. It happened 2 weeks ago, you see. I thought I could forget, but her face kept crossing my mind. She had these beautiful green eyes and raven hair down her shoulders. I don't know how Mauricio could have missed her. As I sat at the bar thinking about that night, the scenario played in my mind. I looked at the neon clock on the wall and it read 11:30, around the same time she walked in. I remember it well. Patrons were rushing in on a Saturday night from the pouring rain, and the song Brandy by Looking Glass was playing. Cigarette smoke and chatter filled the air. Mauricio had just poured me a gin and tonic when someone passing brushed against my back. Someone sweet, someone with a sweet scent. I couldn't help but to notice the attractive young lady heading toward the single table for 2 at the end of the bar. She sat down and glanced at her watch as if waiting for someone. She had on a black leather jacket over an off-white business suit. Someone had a lucky day. I remember the waiter setting down a mixed drink as he checked the watch again. About 10 minutes later, I noted her date hadn't arrived, so I decided to try my luck. I walked over and introduced myself and asked if I might join her. She hesitated at first, bit her lip, and then said her name was Lily Harper. That's a nice name, I said, and complimented her about her fragrance. She simply said, I do business over on 7th. Flower Mart. Well, then that explains it, I replied. You've got the right girl. She smiled and said I was trying to make points and that her company had just arrived. My luck. That's when a tall man in a dark suit headed our way. I excused myself and thanked her for the short meeting. Maybe we'll meet again, I said. She said, maybe. I nodded to the approaching man. He just grinned. It was a bit awkward. But Lily wasn't happy about something, for when she passed me by, she gave me a worried glance. Something was amiss. As they walked out the double brass doors, I was left with the hopes we'd meet again sometime. Why couldn't I be so lucky? I didn't work so much, maybe I'd meet someone like her. I did security on the weekends. After that, after sharing my empty glass, wondering what if, Mauricio asked if I wanted another gin. I said no thanks, that it was time for me to go. I bid him good night and rushed to my white Ford sedan, and the rain hadn't let off either. Luckily, I had parked my car across the street. Not only was it coming down hard, but it was one cold night. At first, I turned the ignition and just sat in my car. I couldn't help but to think about that Lily and that man had just and they might have had a heated argument. And on a rain like this, cold and stormy in the dark streets of downtown Los Angeles, anything could happen. I realized I was overreacting to something I had no right to be worried about. Who was Lily Harper anyway? Did that man's relationship with her suddenly turn sour? I grimaced and hit the wipers and commenced to driving. I drove from 11th Street to Broadway and then turned left. Then I stopped again at the next signal. As I waited for it to change, something told me to turn right. The light changed and I did so. But when I approached the end of that street, I noticed someone standing at the bus stop. Someone in desperate need of help. My help. So I pulled over and rolled down my blurry passenger window. Strange as it appeared, and as if by mere chance, the girl from the bar, the girl Lily, stood there staring at me. She was drenched from head to toes, her face half covered by jet black hair. Her eyes said, "Help me." She looked frightened and lost. "Lily?" I asked. She nodded yes. "Get in. I'll see that you get home." When she entered my car, there was this lifeless feeling about her, her face and lips pale from the chill. I shook my head, astounded by the fact that I sensed a bad feeling, an intuition perhaps. Something bad had happened. She just looked straight ahead. Thank you. If you want to know how it ended, read the online journal.
We definitely do. Thank you, David. Yes. Our next reader is Nan Friedley, who is reading from the Anthology. Nan is a retired special education teacher and graduate of Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. Her writings have been published in a poetry chapbook, Short Bus Ride. Nan has participated in various workshops and been published many times in the Anthology, sponsored by Inlandia. Welcome again, Nan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure I made it as clear as I might have. Everyone, please let us know what you're reading, the title, and if you need to say a few words. Thank you.
No problem. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
In the back, good. This time I won't be long. I have 3 quickie poems that I wrote. The first one is called File Box, and it's for my mom. Recently, I became keeper of the dog-eared, flour-coated, butter-stained recipe cards from her kitchen, and generations of kitchens before hers. She was the one I called if my white sauce was lumpy. I'm still following her recipes, hoping she's looking over my shoulder, reminding me to keep stirring. The second one is for my 2 goofy cats at home. Catastrophe. Look at me, sprawled in the hall, waving my paw under your door, meowing on behalf of my little sister Buttercup and me. Just letting you know we're hungry. You haven't fed us for weeks, or days, or since this morning, or an hour ago. Our bowls are empty, and so are we. And the last one. Between salon visits in a pandemic, I clipped my own bangs with dull silver scissors leaned over the bathroom sink. Referenced a step-by-step YouTube guide, eyeballed my cell phone and the mirror, and the bathroom mirror as dry hair was parted on the left, sliced at an angle across my wrinkled, worried brow. Randomly snipped stray strands hanging annoyingly in my eyes. Quick assessment in the mirror, and I continued the process until I was a twin of my 2nd grade school picture with 70 bags held back by butterfly barrettes.
Our next reader will be Jose Luis Vizcarra. He's reading from the Anthology. Jose Luis is a veteran, an educator, and a naturalized citizen. He became involved with Inlandia through Selena Diana Bumpus's workshop and continues to learn with Rose Monet and Will Clark. Will is here today in the back. So give us a wave, Will. There he is. All right, thank you so much, Jose Luis. Over to you. So just over from there.
Okay. You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you cannot take the classroom out of the teacher.
Yeah.
The best way to teach is to walk around and you have to control the class, right? All right, here we go. I believe that education is important, right? So here we go. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Oh man, how ignorant you are. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? You are asking me that foolish question? Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? I don't choose your wealth. I gave you the greatest treasure, the 5 senses that you ignore. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? What did you do with the biggest asset that I grant you? Your time. You wasted it. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Everyone is born with the same wealth. A few take advantage and most destroy their lives. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? You did not put yourself in that horrible public schools, but you put yourself in college debts. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? You were foolish enough to beg for a job, and the smart ones became business owners and investors. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? How many credit cards did you use to acquire? Useless, depreciating trash with high interest rate. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Did you search for information in the right places and invested your time learning? Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Why did you buy brand name purchases to advertise those companies without paying? Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Why would you accept such meager wages and then earn $1 and spend 5 more? Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? If you study only a small fraction of the time wasted watching crap on TV, you will not be poor now. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? When I created you, I knew you were faulty. Then I created woman, the one you need to fix your problems. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? If you understood that having a job would keep you poor, and yet you were financially insane to stay there and waste your time and health. Oh Lord, why did you make me poor? Oh man, despite your ignorance, I love you, and that is why the Bible has all the answers to your poverty and a total wasted life. Now, let's change the subject. What is the most important thing that we wear? The shoes. So it is to honor La Chancla. I am a poor chancla that people step on. Those fools ignore me only until they can find me. Time after time, I carry all the weight, sometimes more if they carry things. When I am lucky, they clean me well. And I thank them for being caring. Year after year, I serve them well. I stay where they leave me every night, only to be serviced as soon as the sun is up. I come in different colors and sizes if it is brown and large. That way I will feel everyone. I love to walk on grass because it gives me support. At times I'm not lucky because my idiot owner stepped on dog shit. He blamed me for being so careless. The fool must now clean me well before stepping inside the house. The more he wears me, the more comfortable I become. So don't ignore me because I carry you everywhere. Because if you ignore me, you will be the one stepping on that dog shit. Once I serve my time, I retire at the trash can. So rest in peace, no longer on that shit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose Luis. There you go.
That's what you get for belonging to Finlandia, right?
I think we all love that. Thank you so much. All right, our next reader is Janet Lako Alexander, who will be reading from the anthology. Janet is a poet, writer, and bilingual educator, a UCR graduate. She was born in Blythe and raised in Rubidoux, right here. This is your turn. She facilitated the Ontario Montclair School District's annual Poetry Day celebration, and now she looks forward to focusing on her own writing. Let's welcome Janet.
I'm honored to have 3 poems in the Inlandia Anthology, and I am reading one of them, Riverside Transit, Route 14. Tuesday morning, 7:13. I run the last block past the Fox Theater to the waiting bus. The door sighs closed and shuts out Weasel, still arguing with himself. Darnell, the driver, looks like Little Richard in uniform. His sly smile reminds me my hair is wet, my makeup slapped on. I sit halfway back between a Chicano and a jungle print. Her boyfriend's shirt says pit bulls only. Across from me, a woman reads a book in Hebrew. My dress is crisp, but my heels frayed with walking. My chérie amour, pretty little one that I adore. Darnell sings with slow jazz phrasing. On University, we pass antique stores and pawn shops. Orange Street, the bell rings. A man in a suit steps down at a bail bond office. Outside the new jail is a blue and white sculpture of shapes forming parents and a child. There's First American Title, snapped together from Lego bricks and white plastic trim. An old man climbs on the bus with a cane. A grimy cat hat shades his eyes. Darnell is telling us how bus drivers get dates. When I see an attractive lady putting her lipstick on, I jam on the brakes. Then I stop the bus, apologize, and help wipe her face. Olivewood Street, framed houses with blind boarded windows, jacarandas, the arroyo green with pines and palms. Pitbulls only is telling his hero, if a dude hits my car, I have to kill him. If a chick hits my car, it's all right. The windows rattle as we pick up speed, curving past Pachapa Hill. But when we get behind closed doors, and she lets her hair hang down, ah ha ha! Darnell's laughter sounds like barking. Empty parking lots at the Plaza Mall. I ring the bell and sway, pole by pole, to the front door. Goodbye, young lady. I thank Darnell and hop down the 3 steps. The blanket lady, vast and regal, climbs aboard. All day she will travel the bus lines, swathed in her smelly blanket. Tomorrow, we will recreate this world. But for now, I cross Central Avenue to my cubicle and files.
Very much. Riverside. Love it. Thank you so much, Janet. Our next reader is S.J. Perry, who's going to be reading from both publications. S.J. Perry's work has appeared in the Journal of Radical Wonder, Treya Needles, and elsewhere. He grew up and was educated in Kansas. He's a retired English teacher and has lived in the San Gorgonio Pass since 1985. Welcome.
Thank you. Actually, I just have 2 little poems for you this afternoon. The first one is called Inland Empire, August. Remember that thunderstorm just as the first day of school let out? Little kids trying to step over gutters running full, trying to keep papers dry, new Pokemon backpacks failing, Astros and Explorers crowding crosswalks, trying to load their kids first. That was years ago. Now those kids have their own, and yellow sun burns hot and dry from March until December. And the second poem is called Birdman. I used to be so bony I could see my heart beating under the skin of my chest. Honestly, I haven't looked lately. At almost 70, I have other concerns, and nobody else cares if I have the physique of an unfledged hatchling.
I'm loving the mosaic we're making today with all the writing as it comes together. That happens, it's beautiful. Our next reader is Heather Takanaga. She's reading from the Anthology. She is a daydreamer who yearns for global longevity, food for all, cat cuddles, and 36-hour days. She writes because life is colorful and so are words. Heather has attended various workshops, including the poetry workshop with James Duca. Thank you so much. Welcome, Heather. Good.
It's called, can you hear me okay?
I think louder. We need to be much louder, actually.
Can you hear me right now?
have to put the mic almost in your mouth.
It is on, so go ahead. Now try. Louder.
Louder.
No pressure though, right?
This is called Correspondence. Bells told me the end of children's play. Below, colors of light scattering, passing farewells for this day. You watch by the windowsill, like a budgie. You repeat the glimmers of words from other lives, of other wishes. Scarlet skies highlight your lips. Your ocean blue eyes reflect the calling of the night. Consumed by hope, I cover your hand. You tilt your head at me, a smile on your face. I wonder if the twitch I feel is a flicker of you inside. I'm afraid to ask, praying instead, remain this way, neat. No lights in the room, till darkness cleanses us both.
Thank you so much. All right, our next reader coming up is Alvin Chamberlain. He's reading from the Anthology. Alvin is a retired teacher and retirement counselor. He received an MBA from the American Graduate School of International Management in Glendale, Arizona. He began attending writing workshops in 2015. Welcome, Alvin. Good to have you.
Thank you, Alondra. I never had a chance to take any creative writing classes, but everything I've learned has been through workshops or through books from Barnes & Noble or from YouTube videos. This poem is called 1,000 No's to Reach a Yes. My teacher always told us it takes 1,000 no's to reach a yes. Perhaps that's why so many talented artists put their dreams to rest. After so many rejections, it's easy for an artist to give up and concede defeat. It's worse if there's a family that needs shelter and food to eat. In America, we say we appreciate the arts, yet it takes 1,000 no's to reach a yes. How many talented people will never see or appreciate, I can only guess. 1,000 no's is often enough to bury talents. We'll never know how much creativity it kills. Countless impoverished artists are forced to throw in the towel and find a job to pay the bills. Laura went to Nashville after the folks back home said her voice was heaven sent. For a decade, she sang at countless gigs, but barely covered her food and rent. She wrote and sang a dozen songs, but none of them the bills did pay. Then she wrote a single hit song, and her career was on its way. Daniel wrote 5 novels over 8 years, yet made no professional or financial progress. Then a reviewer praised the 6th one he released, and soon folks said he was an overnight success. This influential reader said his novel was contemporary and bold. To Daniel, though, it seemed no different from the ones he never sold. Everyone marveled at Jeannie's paintings. Fortune and fame were at hand, she was told. Still, when she put them up for view in the gallery, the majority were never sold. Then she started painting modern art, just random objects you use each day. Rich folks with too much money began competing with each other on how much they would pay. Jenny was a theatrical fool who got a starring role in every student play. After college, he moved to the hills of Hollywood, CA to work and stay. He joined the Screen Actors Guild and found bit parts on many shows. How he survives in that expensive city, no living soul in his family knows. Tina was a lead singer in a country band that played gigs all over the land. They entertained countless people, but when the show was over, she slept in the back of the van. Fortunately, she didn't give up, and eventually fame and record contracts were found. Now she travels in the band's spacious tour bus as they sell out shows all around. 1,000 no's to reach a yes, 1,000 poems that will never see the light of day. There's always a battle between writing for fun and a desire to make it pay. 1,000 no's to reach a yes, the odds might be better on a foreign battlefield. Still, all the years of toil and rejection can often some unexpected masterpiece yield. Facing 1,000 no's to reach a yes, a wise writer would throw his hands up in the air. This writer, though, is just too old and stupid to heed the daunting odds or even care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So lots of nodding, knowing heads out there in the audience. Our next reader is Jose Chavez. He's reading from the Anthology. Jose is a retired bilingual teacher and dedicates his life to writing. He's had poetry published in the Multilingual Educator Journal, Acentos Review, Inlandia Anthology, and has written 2 award-winning bilingual poetry books for children. Welcome, Jose.
You hear me all right?
Yeah.
My nephew passed away some time ago. He was 35 years old, and he passed too soon. We miss him terribly. This poem is for him, Just Quiet. Time sneaks up on you, they say. You don't have enough time, or too much time on your hands. It may catch you when you awaken, overshadow your life gradually, like a dark vaulted ceiling dripping with sweat. Caught us off guard a week before Christmas, shopping's done, flashing lights shimmer on our artificial holiday tree. No time to pour a morning cup yet. My brother called early with the news, said Philip was alone when it happened last night. And together they watched Batman that afternoon, that sunny afternoon, and Philip felt good. He later worked out at the gym. He was remembered by friends at his service. Well, they had fish together, and they laughed at his stories and drank imported French vodka. A newly married couple spoke about friendship and how he helped them move into their new apartment. Everyone admired his sense of humor. Great under pressure, they said. The girls remembered big dancing eyes. Privately, family thought it could have been something he saw in the Gulf War. He also told something he remembers he did things as a Marine. No more long commutes through snow in the narrow canyon to work in the big city. No worries about a new house payment, or if he could afford a plasma screen TV, or if he had enough to pay off his student loans, or go on a Mexican vacation. Broken pieces were left behind, 3 children to raise, 1 from a previous marriage. Time to prepare them for college and new jobs, ready them for responsibilities and babies of their own. We have a story about a car accident that broke his leg when he was 10. At age 3, he said that his aunt's hair looked like broccoli. How do you forget that? Time changes everything, they say, but really time changes nothing. We change, not always for the best. A large halo surrounded the full moon before the memorial service that evening to help us forget that smoke and mirrors can hide nightmares and menacing voices. Dreams crashed against canyon walls and quickly floated down the Rio Grande in New Mexico. No fog, no haze, no goodbyes to share. Forgiveness was never asked for. Just quiet. This next poem is short, and it takes a different tone. How many of you remember the summer of 1968? Good. If you're too young, you missed a lot. James Taylor had a song, Caroline on My Mind. He says, there ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. Next to the title is Summer Girl. Next to a convenience store that sells cheap gas for commuters, I see her again at her shop. Tie-dyed summer blouse, splash of crimson, yellow, sparkling orange. Just after dawn, there's a fragrance of lilacs in the air. Rustic freesias swoon in clay pots when she strolls by. Daisies stare behind dark eyes. Carnations beg, come to me. From a crate of tulips, she looks up, olive skin and green eyes. Should I stop, ask about calla lilies? Or when should I plant red roses? Maybe we'll walk. Maybe we'll talk weather, heat. We'll talk about a drought that lasts too long. An early fog lingers while the sun waits to break through. I hesitate and look toward the busy freeway on-ramp. On a clear morning, I'll meet her. I'll whisper her name, my flower girl.
68, Martin Luther King was killed. I got into the army. I will never forget it.
That's true, it was a big year in many ways. Wow, we were all very moved and settled in, and then you brought us back. Thank you, Jose. We have our next reader coming to the front. Mary McLaughlin is reading from the Anthology. She has written with the Jocelyn Joy Writers, which is facilitated by May Wagner Marinello since 2015. And May is with us in back. Give us a wave, May, your famous class over there in Redlands. Originally from Levittown, New York, Mary has lived in Ireland before coming to Redlands. So welcome today, Mary. We're glad to have you.
Thanks very much. The first one I'm going to read is called The Cayley. I don't know if you know what a Cayley is, but if you're from Ireland, you would. It's a dance, party, music, just a get together and a community. And we've been doing for 22 years in a friend's house in Claremont. So here's called The Cayley. Semicircle of musicians ready. Dancers form a square of 8. 1, 2, 3, music, the room alive. Dancers move to the beat. Dancers form a square of 8. 4 couples swing in unison. Dancers move to the beat. Ancient jigs and reels, layers of sound. 4 couples in unison, laughs and hops fill the room. Ancient jigs and reels, layers of sound. Immersed in the moment, this is the world. Laughs and hops fill the room. Musicians absorbed, play as one. Immersed in the moment, this is the world. 2 quick taps on the bowron, and just 8 beats to go. Let's do another one. That's that one. And I have another one coming up here. Let me find it. Here it is. this one is called dyslexia. I don't know if anybody's dealt with that, but I have in certain ways. So dyslexia, round peg in a square hole, adrift, unable to decipher the letters whirl and float, a disability or a gift. Love of learning to admit, support and fortitude to keep trying, a disability or a gift. Learning to read melds and shift, now reading to learn, a disability or a gift. To reach the summit, pushing to overcome a disability or a gift. A talented mathematician with grit, a teacher who understands and leaves no one behind, a disability or a gift. A round peg in a square hole. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So many beautiful pieces, so many riches today. We are about halfway through the program. It's going quickly, and we appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you again so much. Our next reader is Mary Briggs. There she is, she's ready to go. Who's reading from the Anthology. Mary is a first-generation Mexican-American, born in 1939 to a family of migrant workers. Mary was raised in East Los Angeles and has resided in Riverside since 1991. Welcome, Mary. We're so glad to have you.
I don't think it's going to help.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. In my senior year in high school, the last semester, I signed up for senior English. As I walked in, I saw many in the class are the top students, the ones who have scholarships to universities, the ones who are straight A students, who will be going to prestigious colleges. I'm petrified. I was already scared, thinking about when I would be required to read in class. In this last year, this final semester, I've come to realize that I'm not fluent in either English or Spanish. I speak Spanglish. When speaking English, if an English word escapes me, I throw in an appropriate Spanish word. In speaking Spanish and cannot find the right Spanish word, I use an English word. In the Hispanic community in East Los Angeles, I am a Polsha, American-born of Mexican parents. There are many English words I cannot pronounce. I am in dread of having to read in English classes. I'm petrified, afraid I'll be humiliated, sneered at, laughed at, or worse, thought stupid. To add to my dread and fear of humiliation, the teacher assigns us an essay on our religious beliefs. The following day, mine is the only one she reads out loud in front of the class. Praising it is the only essay of individual thought, criticizing the class for the consensus of group beliefs, almost insinuating the class is a flock of sheep, stating only one person differed. I thought everyone believed in the origin of species and evolution. It was taught in school, that's where I learned it. The silence was ominous. Now I was terrified. I felt like a Salem witch, in fear of a witch hunt. Thankfully, she did not name the writer, but I lived in fear of exposure. For 3 or 4 days, I sat in class, dreading assignments and class participation, observing the bright students and the lone Japanese genius in class. One morning, towards the end of the week, the drama class teacher walked in, asked for volunteers for the drama class. He had a shortage, needed students. I saw my salvation. Before I realized what I was doing, I raised my hand and left the classroom with the drama teacher. Rationalizing my decision, thinking I would learn something useful that I needed, how to better express myself, perhaps learn useful facial expressions, voice modulation, improve my posture, acting, all I imagined an acting class had to offer. There was none of this. Immediately, the teacher informed us the class was required to provide a short program consisting of a short play for the student body and the school auditorium. Immediately, he picked the 4 or 5 students for the play, then announced the rest of the class had to come with a short skit of our own design and perform it in class. That was our assignment and our grade. We were on our own. Bewildered, disappointed, and lost, desperately assert my mind, my minute knowledge, and my lack of experience. After exhausting all my possibilities, I could only come up with a karaoke. I would dress up as best I could with modesty as a rock star, pretend to sing a hot top tune as I'd seen on TV. I didn't even know what a top tune was, since I did not listen to any music. After school, I only had time to help with dinner and washing dishes, then finish the night with homework. After listening to the music, I picked and bought my stepfather lent me one of his records. This is a better record, he told me. It was rock and roll, definitely more appropriate. On the appointed day, I did my pitiful amateur performance. To my horror, at the end of the class skits, the teacher announces he will add my skit to the end of the auditorium school play. What could I do? Nothing but accept my doom and comply. On that dreadful day, I dressed in my most modest, respectable body-hugging dress. Determined and brave as I can manage, I step out on stage and do my number, mouthing into the mic, gripping it tightly, wiggling and stomping as modestly as I can manage, and still look sexy. Trying desperately to keep a smile on my face between the lyrics, and even more desperately, trying not to look at the sea of students. At the end, the students clap. Of course, I've always believed the audience was just being polite. I was heartfully grateful for the polite generosity. In retrospect, at the end, instead of having to read in a class of 30 students, I ended up having to perform in an auditorium for the whole school. Did I learn my lesson? To think, consider before you leap? Of course not.
Wonderful lesson for us all. I love this. This is wonderful. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Our next reader is Lynn Stewart. She'll be coming to the front right now. She's reading from the Anthology. Lynn has expressed and reacted to her world by writing journals, poetry, essays, while simultaneously developing skills in the visual arts. She views writing and painting as tools for personal expression. Let me move this so I don't block it away. In humble service of love and hope. Very worthy goal. Thank you, Lynn. Are you going to want to use the microphone?
I think I will.
And you let me know, would it help if I held it? Yeah, it's a little awkward having you standing over, but it will help. I can still hear it if you can hear that.
Can you hear me?
Speak up.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
This is called Albatross, and it's a memoir of a moment during the pandemic. My nerves are frayed like a holy old sweater, worn out and unraveling. We thought we were ready to put some normalcy back in our lives. A trip to a local coffee shop was a great adventure until we entered with our masks secure to find signs reminding us of all the coronavirus safety precautions we must take while dining and all the changes to the establishment's operating procedures. Every other table and booth are out of service, with a sign explaining the principle of safe distancing. Servers are donning surgical masks, face shields, and plastic gloves as they distribute abbreviated disposable paper menus. No more communally shared condiments or seasonings on the table. Instead, we are given our own individual share of minuscule packets of salt and pepper, and little plastic or paper cups with a selection of our very own ketchup and mustard. The supermarkets have a line outside the store of shoppers standing single file, 6 feet between each person in line. The line to enter Costco stretched clear around the building when we went for groceries early in the pandemic. Even today, I stood in a line outside Trader Joe's. As 1 or 2 people left the store, 1 or 2 people were allowed to enter. I was in line outside in the hot summer sun for 15 minutes. The store is now providing large portable canopies every few feet for shade whilst waiting in the line. Nearly everyone I encounter outside or inside is wearing a face mask. These have become fashion statements with every color, pattern, style, and logo imaginable. I am still adapting and adjusting to the complications of communicating effectively through these barriers. I and many of my friends have hearing deficits to begin with, so the advent of mufflers muffling our voices is a challenge. Also, my eyeglasses tend to fog up under these germ stoppers. However minor the details are individually, they add up to a major alteration of the status quo. Using FaceTime for a doctor visit, Zooming a religious meeting, not being with family and friends for months, and so forth, is eating away at my equilibrium. At first, I enjoyed home time and accomplished some long-delayed household tasks. I've become disinterested in these home projects. I am too old and set in my ways to handle the subtle and overt changes the pandemic has imposed on me. I have been coping for years with my ever-narrowing world due to the simple reality of aging. It has taken conscious effort to get used to living with chronic and deteriorating conditions. This goes hand in hand with functional limitations and a shrinking of my exposure to the world of youth and middle age. There is anger in me over my situation that I better not ignore. This confinement has become an albatross around my neck.
Thank you so much, Lynn. We relate with that, I think, as well. Our next reader is Nikki Gordon. She contributed to the online journal. Nikki is a nonprofit professional who holds an MFA from UCLA. She lives, writes, and enjoys gardens in the San Gabriel Valley. Thank you, Nikki. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
So my piece is a personal essay, so I'm just going to read the first 3 paragraphs, and I hope it entices you to visit my journal. So the piece is called Generation to Generation, Horror and Healing Along the 10 Freeway. When I heard my son's middle school was on lockdown because of an active shooter on the nearby UCLA campus, I got in the car. It was an otherwise uneventful Wednesday in 2016. I was working in Palm Springs that day, and there were 2 hours of roadway between my son and me. 2 hours of news radio and rotations per minute and wrestling familiar fears. Is nowhere safe? How is this the world we live in? I wanted better for him. My young years were riddled with the heart-skipping pops of gunfire. I grew up in Fontana, a dusty Southern California town south of the 10 freeway, known for steel, trucking, and auto racing. Less than 70 miles from the sparkling coast, my childhood home was nestled among gangs whose rivalry sometimes left shell casings in our front yard. An especially horrific drive-by left one of my neighbors, who may or may not have been a target, wheelchair-bound. He was in his early 20s when his leg was torn apart by bullets. In the simultaneously fast and slow-motion moments that followed the shooting, some of the adults on my block emerged from their homes to aid the victim and his family. One of the de facto first responders, wiry, tattooed, and charged with adrenaline, sprinted up our front walk to join my dad, who was among those en route to help. He reported to my dad with an earshot of us kids that it looked like a shark had taken a bite out of our neighbor's leg. I had only heard what transpired outside, but somehow I can't unsee it. It was the early 90s before Sandy Hook, Columbine, and Virginia Tech, and my elementary school had active shooter drills with the same regularity as fire and earthquake. We called them gun drills at the time, and the protocol began with a teacher or aide interrupting recess with 3 shrieking whistle blows. That sound alerted us children to stop where we were on the yard and lay flat until one long whistle communicated to us that the situation had been cleared and we could file back to our classrooms. I will never forget the feeling of hot asphalt baking my belly through my thin t-shirt, gritty pebbles sticking to my sweaty little palms, my mind running wild as I lay face down in the heat imagining the scenario around me. In my imagination, a shadowy figure would emerge from the adjacent park, cross our sports fields through the chain link fence that was always ajar, and spray bullets across the yard where we played.
Thank you so much. Yes, landiajournal.net is where you go to finish reading that story. Amazing. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Marlene Jones. Marlene Jones will be reading her work from the Anthology. She has lived in Riverside for the past 26 years. She was born in Jamestown, New York, and is of Italian ancestry. Marlene is married to Robert Jones and has 3 children. The retired couple owned Jones Backhoe Service, of which Marlene was the president. She's just right there. Marlene, I'm looking in the audience and I know she's here. So much for my peripheral vision.
4th of July, 2021. Rocky shivers and pants heavily all day, even though we give him the correct dosage of trazodone hydrochloride prescribed by the veterinarian. The loud popping fireworks frighten our dog. Bob and I watch the news on television while trying to comfort him with hugs, stroking his fur, and calmly talking to him. At 8 p.m., things change. A deafening boom scares the 3 of us. Rocky gazes into our eyes with fear. The ear-splitting sound comes from behind our house by the sliding door leading to the backyard pool area. My husband and I jump to our feet and rush to see how close the firecrackers are to our home. The rear of our residence faces south, overlooking Berry and beyond to Martin Luther King High School, which is about 4 miles as the crow flies. Illegal pyrotechnics light up the night. The number of blasting rockets is overwhelming. They are the type set off at Disneyland or fairgrounds. Beautiful, but particularly dangerous in a residential setting. Bob sprints to the TV area to check on Rocky. I rush to follow him. Our pet is scooping up his dog bed in terror. Rocky, do you want to go for a ride? I cry out. He races to the garage and scratches my car door with his front paws. Rocky wants to escape the explosive noises. I grab his leash and vamoose to the gas station, believing that the ride will do him good. But no, all the way down Alessandro Boulevard toward Moreno Valley, the same illegal fireworks dominate each side of the highway. The dog cannot sit still. Neighbors living barely 30 feet away from the gas station ignite the sky with the same kind of illegal fireworks. Chilling, Unbelievable. Police cars drive up and down the main road without targeting any residents for forbidden firecrackers. I figure they do not have the manpower for the enormous quantity of offenders, and that the law enforcement must prepare to handle worse problems should they arise. Dang, my dog is a wreck. I drive home and stay up soothing him the best I can. Nothing helps much. Finally, at 3 a.m., Rocky sleeps on his doggy bed by my bedstead, where I ultimately collapse. Surreal. An honest, caring, hardworking man passes away on April 30th, 2004 at Kaiser Hospital in Bellflower. Our family is in mourning. He is my dear 87-year-old dad. Family and friends are saddened, but more so, Mom has lost her true love. She is beside herself with grief as her heart aches for him. Embracing her small frame with affection, Bob and I assure her that we want her with us and bring her to live in Riverside at our home straight away. She will be 90 in May. Mike's old bedroom becomes his Grandma Yanni's boudoir. Her doctor recommends she keep her feet up as often as possible. Thankfully, our sectional sofa includes a chaise where she can watch the news, Jeopardy, and Wheel of Fortune in comfort. Mom and I are frequently challenged by Scrabble and Canasta. When Janetta, my sister, visits, she joins us. We learned these games from our parents. It gives us an opportunity as young girls to enjoy the games and become familiar with spelling and mathematics. As we get older, we continue playing them with mom, dad, relatives, and friends. In spite of her medical issues, Mom does quite well for herself by following her doctor's orders, stay on a diabetic diet, walk around the house with a walker for exercise, take prescribed medicine at the correct times, come into the doctor's office for checkups. Mom is a loving, caring person who always sees the best in people. I never heard her say an unkind word to anyone. She endears herself to others by her positive personality. People just seem to gravitate towards her. It's over, or it's done.
It goes fast.
It's okay.
Oh,
Thank goodness Kate's paying attention because I completely lost track of time with some days entirely. Our next reader is May Wagner Marinello, who's going to be reading from the Anthology, followed by Delia Bodden. May has been part of Inlandia since a 2008 writing workshop with Ruth Nolan. In 2014, she began facilitating a weekly writing workshop called Jocelyn Joy Writers at the Jocelyn Senior Center in Redlands, and kept it going strong through the pandemic by leading the way in doing it live in person at the Senior Center.
We did.
And then the Zoom somehow. So give her an extra hand for that. That's amazing. Simultaneously, I should say. It wasn't one or the other. It was both. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Everywhere? Okay, thank you. Before I start, I just want to say what a wonderful writing group I do have. We are a hybrid group, and we average like 7 Zoomers and 11 in-person people each week. And we meet each week year-round. And Mary, who read earlier, no matter what prompt I give, she turns it into a poem, and we're all just amazed. Okay. So anyway, with that, without further ado, I wanted to write about how it was for me, a child in a small town in southwestern North Dakota. About how my sister Betty and I would walk from our house to downtown, where the wonderful Dale's Variety Store existed, about how we would stand in front of the old-fashioned candy counter where its windows showcased the enticing variety of penny candy. What should we spend our pennies on? One of the tempting choices was small, jelly-like black candies shaped like little boys. It's even hard for me to write these words now, some 70 years later, and will be harder yet if I were to read them aloud, about how these black candies in the shape of a small boy were called, I can't say the word, babies. We had no idea that we were saying a bad word. I knew nothing about prejudice or racial injustice then. I had never seen a black person in my small hometown, where Highway 12 ran east and west through it. Not a single traffic light in the whole community. But I did see black people when, in my chaotic childhood, my mother would take Betty and me to Riverside, California, where her parents lived, leaving my dad and brothers behind. We went by bus, train, or car. When we were going by car, I would see signs along the highway as we approached towns that said, Green River Ordinance enforced here. Mama, what does that mean? I asked. And she would answer, it means black people are supposed to be out of town before sunset. It was something I could not comprehend. What was wrong with black people being in town after dark? I wanted to write about how my mother's parents lived on Prospect Avenue in Riverside in the late 40s or early 50s. I loved their house. I loved Prospect Avenue. And to keep it within 5 minutes, I've left some things out. Another memory of those early trips to Riverside was when my relatives dropped my cousins and me off at the Fox Theater downtown. I'm the kid who didn't like going to movies. During Pinocchio, I knelt in front of the scratchy red plush seat at the Strand Theater in my hometown, with my head buried in its cushion. I didn't want Pinocchio to be a bad boy and get donkey ears. I didn't want him to be swallowed by a whale. I cried when Bambi's mother was shot. The movie playing at the Fox Theater that day was Uncle Tom's Cabin, based on a book by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Two memories from that movie remain etched in my brain. If I was scared for Pinocchio, imagine my terror when Simon Legree lashed his whip at slaves working on a plantation. If I cried when Bambi's mother was shot, I sobbed uncontrollably when little Black Topsy, sobbing just like me, knelt at the bed of an angelic-looking white child as she lay dying in her bed. On one of our return trips to Riverside, my grandma and grandpa had moved from Prospect Avenue to Eucalyptus Avenue, across from Longfellow School. I was confused about why they had moved. I liked the old house and the old street much better. Grandma said they had to move because the, quote, colored were moving into the old neighborhood. After one Christmas and many summers in California, my mother's sister and I left my dad and two brothers for the last time in 1957. I still had 2 years of high school to go. The week before I was to graduate from Poly High School, I married a handsome Marine who was stationed at Camp Pendleton. It was not all that unusual in 1959 to get married that young. When my husband's time in the Marines was up, we returned to his hometown in southern Illinois. He had been looking forward to reconnecting with his friend Philip. One night, Philip, my husband, and I went to a bar nearby Shawneetown, a wild and woolly town at the border between Illinois and Indiana. At 18, I was still too young to have ever spent much time in bars, especially one like the one we went to in Shawneetown, where Confederate flags were part of the decor. My husband left me to go to the restroom. I was sitting at the small round table when I heard someone at my ear say, "I believe they're playing our song." I turned my head to see who had said it, and it was a stranger. My husband had picked him up by the front of his shirt, and I thought there was going to be a brawl, but thankfully it didn't happen, because the little band began playing a rousing version of Dixie. The crowd was singing and cheering and stomping their feet, and Philip got up on the table and danced. It was the first and last time I ever experienced anything like that. Thank goodness. One day in June 1964, I was ironing clothes as I watched TV. 3 civil rights workers had disappeared while on their way to the southern states to register people, mainly black people, to vote. The search for them went on for weeks. Their bodies were found buried in an earthen dam, having been tortured and killed by members of the KKK and aided by someone in law enforcement. That was the day my bubble burst, the day my illusions were shattered. How could this happen in America, land that I loved? How can it still be happening all these years later?
Very powerful piece, thank you. Delia is next, Delia Bodden. She is reading something from both publications, I believe, is that right? She is a poet, writer, and artist. Born in Zacatecas, Mexico, she was raised in Planada near Merced. Her stories can be found in A Short Guide to Finding Your First Home in the United States and Writing from Inlandia. They're both Inlandia publications. So thank you so much, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Bird watching. Watching the assortment of birds.
Can you hear her?
No. Brown sparrows.
So no, it feels like it, huh? But you need to speak, hold it closer, and speak into it. Okay.
Bird watching.
Louder.
Watching the assortment of birds. Blue jays, brown sparrows, and yellow finches with red beaks on neighbor Diane's wrought iron fence. Morning light scatters across the horizon and trickles down my narrow horizontal patio, shattering into the blue mosaic water fountain as they come for their early breakfast. She hangs large aluminum bird feeders filled to the brim with seed. Luckily, she can still find bird seed at her favorite store despite the pandemic. However, I particularly watch a red-breasted robin that flies to my patio from Diane's purple and pink flowered jacaranda tree. He is a brave one to come for my breakfast so close to the door. Sometimes I have bread left over from our breakfast and let it harden in my whirlpool oven with a dial on off. It usually takes a day or two for the bread to be just right, but worth the wait. I was told that soft bread would make them choke and eventually kill them. The robin must think this is a special treat for him as he happily chirps while feasting on multi-grain bread. After filling his tummy with crumbs, he hops and flutters his wings to the Martha Washington fuchsia-colored geranium garden. He picks earthworms from his sharp beak in the dark and moist soil. It pleases me that he is getting a balanced diet. He is my friend, and I feel that we have bonded. The best part is he lets me get close to him as I greet and talk to him each day. There is something mesmerizing about bird watching. I can feel my blood pressure drop and a sense of peacefulness come over me. I am in tune with God's feathered creatures. After filling their tummies, fluttering their wings, and flying into the clear azure sky, chirping and tweeting melodies that is music to my ear. Their song, so beautiful, so perfect, and flawless, birds that sing for their daily bread.
All right, our next reader is Georgette Buckley. Georgette is going to be reading from the Anthology. She values the knowledge and camaraderie she gained from Selena Diana Bumbus's classes. How many knew and loved Selena Diana? She had a very profound, she passed away a little while back, and had a very profound influence on Inlandia and in her workshop, which will continue to carry on the tradition today. She has also enjoyed workshops with Tim Hatch, Rose Monet, and Crystal Clark. So thank you. Here we go with Georgette Buckley.
Hello.
Did that connect? Yeah, it's on. We are so sorry that we don't have.
All right. I have 2 poems today. Respite. Crashed into the glass door.
Let's make sure it's on. You know we can't. I don't understand why. Let's see. Testing. You can't hear me either. Is it on? It is on. Testing. Not
I'm
really.
gonna turn it off and turn it back on, and let's see if that fixes it.
We're gonna try that.
I don't do well with electronics, so it might be my vibe.
I have a friend whose mother cannot keep a watch running because of that.
Power on, line in.
Wow.
You know this is working.
Thank you.
That woke us up for sure.
Yeah.
Now, but we want it to face toward the back, right?
Yes.
And
I
now
hear
you're getting the most of it, Jose there. Okay, yeah, that's much better, all right.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
No.
Here we go again. Just be loud.
Crash. Into the glass door. Tiny neon olive belly, white and black, wing stripes. I croon to quivering black beak and darting beady eyes. Presenting water and doormat, I photograph its luminosity. It shoots out of patio. A raven darts in, barely missing the window, turns into parts. Terrified, tiny manager. Are my efforts in vain? Number 5. Chanel fabricates Spain. Floral musk, Savannah. Minimal linear decanter. Stopper mimics steeple. Black and white, elegance, or nun's habit. Potion tempts fate.
Great. It's this audio system we got going here. Our next reader is Sylvia Clark. She will be reading from the Anthology. Sylvia often writes memoir or poetry in response to suggestions she hears in Inlandia workshops with Carlos Cortez, Rose Monet, or Will Clark, whom she knows very well. She and her husband, Will, have called the Inland Empire home for over 35 years. The sound feels a little uneven. Is it coming out a little in whatever? Okay. Today, our motto is let's just do our best. All right. So, thank you, Sylvia.
How I see it now. Doesn't sound like it's going
Closer to your mouth. Try.
In my mouth almost.
Yes. Like a rock star.
During a writer's workshop I attended in the summer of 1985, I wrote about a traumatic incident I remembered from childhood. Just 2 months past my 4th birthday, Daddy and I were heading from our Montana home to the sanitarium in Melrose and to the hospital at Butte to bring Mama and baby sister Elvina home. The road was clear, but snow lay in the fields and in the ditches. I must have tired of looking out the window at the snow and sagebrush because I decided to lie down in the front seat next to Daddy. Daddy's lap looked like a good place to put my head as I slipped my head under his arm and the steering wheel. The car jerked and we landed in the snowy ditch. I don't remember what Daddy said, but I got the distinct impression that something I did made us go into the ditch. While he tramped around the snow looking for a way to get it back to the road, I I sat looking at my weeping face in the chrome knobs on the dashboard thinking, my fault, my fault. Much of the joy of going to see Mama and our new baby fled. A few years ago, I shared this incident with a friend who is practicing counseling for her degree. She helped me reshape the story by asking, how would you have felt if your father had asked you to help him get branches to put under the tires so you could get out of the ditch? Imagining that scenario changed it for me. I now have a different perspective and no longer feel the pain of that memory. Besides, I'm learning to be kinder to myself, to laugh at myself in place of crying or feeling guilty. About time. When I think of that incident now, I realize that my father was probably startled by my putting my head in his lap. After all, I didn't ask permission first. I just moved by impulse. He may also have been very sensitive in that area of his body and overreacted, jerking the steering wheel. That was the move that put the car in the ditch. In my mid-40s, I came to the realization that I have many of the symptoms of ADHD. Distractibility, forgetfulness, impulsiveness, inability to sit still, so forth. When I turned 60, someone said, I remember you were always a busy little girl. And Mother once told me trying to teach me to sew was like trying to harness a wild deer. My college roommate, I remember, once said, I'll go to church with you, Sylvia, if you will sit still. I must usually have fidgeted. Perhaps it was my hyperactivity that distracted my father that December day and put us in the ditch. Time and maturity can change perspective.
We really appreciate that piece and identify with that, I think. Our next reader is Will Clark. He's making his way to the front. Will is going to be reading from the Anthology. He puts it best, I think, for many of us when he says he tolerates writing but loves having written. Anybody relate? He was born and spent 27 years of his life in Africa. He misses the guidance and wisdom of Selena Diana Bumpus and is attempting to keep his legacy alive in her former students through Selena's Scribes, which is the workshop he leads. Welcome, Will. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Nice.
Good. With reference to the last story, the baby Elvina is sitting in the back row back there.
Where are you? Let's see who it is. This is the baby. There she is. All right. Thank you for coming.
Okay, I'm reading from page 82 if you want to follow along. Encounter in North Las Vegas. Our family, we love to travel. And you meet all kinds of people. Here are some of them. The first day of our trip to Michigan, we stopped at the Sunrise Inn in North Las Vegas. When I went in, the desk clerk was in a protracted phone conversation with a prospective guest who spoke loudly with an East Asian accent. In the next 20 minutes, while I stood on one foot and then the other waiting, the clerk explained the cost of the motel and what all it included at least 20 times. I could see that she was at wit's end. She maintained her professional cool only by sheer force of will, and it was really costing her emotionally. Finally, she said, "May I put you on hold while I wait on 2 sets of customers?" She sat back, just shaking with stress and exertion. I congratulated her for not losing her cool. She relaxed visibly and smiled her appreciation. She'd been telling the person on the phone that the room would cost her $99. I showed her Google's advertisement for 44. I was told this price was if I had booked it in a week in advance through one of the online marketers and didn't include taxes, etc. In the end, she let me have the room for $58. After settling in, we went to the truck stop next door to get some supper. After going to the inn, we filled up the car. Before going to the inn, we'd filled up the car at a pilot station in North Las Vegas. A very filthy woman in a tattered and dirty dress came to the car window and told Sylvia how she had 3 children and no food, and she was hungry. She certainly played strongly on Sylvia's heartstrings. Finally, Sylvia pulled out a $20 bill and handed it to her. She blessed Sylvia profusely, and then asked her if she could spare another $20. Sylvia couldn't. Now, as we walked into the truck stop for supper, this brazen woman walked jauntily into the bar, in the truck stop, with a man in tow. Of course, she showed no sign of recognition when she saw us. I assume that these 3 poor children went to bed hungry that night again, if they indeed existed. Ms. Frump may also have gone a long way toward increasing that number to 4. This was also a Subway. There was also a Subway and a Don Taco next to the bar. The clerk at the order desk of Don Taco spoke no English, so I ordered in my broken Spanish. She pointed to a notice board that offered chicken tacos for 99 cents on Tuesdays. It was Tuesday. I ordered 2 of them and a chili relleno, which I am partial to. Sylvia had 2 cheese enchiladas with a combination, salad, beans, and rice. Back in our room, we fell into bed exhausted, hardly considering this most recent affirmation of the recommendation that we not support panhandlers.
All right, who's hungry for Mexican food now after hearing this? We have 6 readers ahead of us to finish up the program, and I'm going to say the order because one of them we've added to the list, and I'm not sure you know it. Reagan, Kelly, then Carlos, Dora, Francis, and Cindy. Did I miss anyone? Okay, very good. Okay, Reagan Kelso-Sells is going to be reading from the online journal. Reagan is a birth worker, community worker, and health advocate. She recently contributed to the Kevin Powell's Writing Workshop Anthology. She lives in San Bernardino with her husband and 3 young adult children. Welcome, Reagan.
Thank you. I'm reading Hearing Mothers and Rainbows. I jolt out of my sleep every time I hear my son Cameron coughing from his room in the middle of the night. Cameron, only 12 years old, sounds like an old man who has smoked a lifetime of cigars. When I hear the constant coughing, I detect that something is wrong. The hacking is dry and short, followed by long wheezes that whistle, sounding mental alarms and making me from half sleep into panic mode as it dawns on me. My son is having an asthma attack. The long night battling asthma attacks begin, and I can only anticipate how the night will end. I sprint into my son's room to give medicine called albuterol. I wrap my arms around Cameron and hold him while trying to gauge whether the asthma attack is bad enough to warrant a trip to the hospital. My motherly quest to nurse my son back to health at home bargains, fights, and prayers that the asthma attack will get better with just one more treatment. But when my son gasps for air and the coughing gets shorter and louder, he puts both his hands at the top of his head as a sign for us to surrender and go to the emergency room. We always leave the house feeling defeated because we know that a single trip to the emergency room may turn into a week's stay at the hospital. We never want to leave home. Frightened, I carry my son through the hospital doors and hope he doesn't have to stay. Cameron was treated regularly for asthma at the Children's Hospital where I worked for 9 years. I was a specialist who helped children cope with hospitalization. I loved my job, it was rewarding, and in many ways my job empowered me with the coping skills to deal with my son's chronic illness. Though exhausting, I became used to alternating between patient mom and employee each time my son's worsening asthma required a hospital admission, which was usually in September when the California wildfire and the fall season merged. When Cameron's severe asthma attack in September 2016 landed him in the pediatric intensive care unit in PICU, I felt helpless and incapable of getting us through another hospital stay. And when I ran into my old friend Michelle, whose daughter Anaya was admitted to our same unit because of a severe asthma attack, it felt like my personal and professional worlds shifted off of their axis, sending my coping skills and emotions spinning. I first met Michelle and Anaya in 2016 at the fitness gym where Michelle and I took the same kickboxing class. We relied on the gym's mini daycare to watch our kids. Anaya was 4 years old at the time and Cameron was 2. I saw Michelle standing in line with her daughter a few times before we made a connection over our kids having asthma. Michelle's rich, satiny espresso brown complexion juxtaposed with the marshmallow-toned child clinging to her leg. Each time I saw Michelle, Anaya was under her mom, holding either onto an arm or a leg. The mother-daughter duo looked impossible to separate, and when they both smiled, their cheekbones formed in the shape of clouds holding together a rainbow.
Our next reader is Kelly Shire. Kelly is an online contributor. Kelly's essays and creative nonfiction have appeared in Brevity, Under the Gum Tree, and several other journals. She holds an MFA from Cal State Long Beach and lives in Temecula, where she is completing a memoir and essays. You are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a flash piece, meaning it's very short. It's less than 500 words, but it is kind of a memoir also. It's called Oak Glen. This week, a slow-rolling flood of mud and debris came churning down from the wildfire-charred hills, closing the main road through town and trashing the namesake steakhouse. And a couple years back, the old museum burned down, the one with the musty taxidermy mountain lions and deer perched on fake boulders. The museum had sat at the top of a steep hill reached by following yellow bear paw prints painted onto black asphalt. And also, when my family visited last, this would be a few years ago, my daughter still in high school, we were hungry and strolled over to the Laws family coffee shop, but it was closed down for good with a sorry sign posted on the railing, and I was surprised at my grief, small but sharp as a paring knife. Remembering in a rush all the years I'd dined with my family as a child before I had my own family, how the lines stretched out the door, and while waiting for our name to be called, I'd watch through a side window an old machine slowly turning, peeling apples for cider. How the bees buzzed and banged against the window, crazy for that sweet smell. And when the waitress finally let us into the back room with the big stone fireplace, no matter what you ordered for lunch, you'd leave room for that slice of pie. I mean, after all, this was why we had come on a Sunday in September or October, driving 70 miles east up into the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains, a couple weeks after my grandma sniffed the LA County air and declared it Oak Glen season. Me and my mom in the back seat of Grandpa's green Monte Carlo, and we parked at the Los Rios Ranch farm stand to buy apple butter and apple cider and even some apples, and then we'd stroll through the village, its small strip of shops, Indian moccasins and Western belts, and the general store with jams and jerky and taffy bins, and the competing pie shops and the bakery where we bought apple cookies that came home in a white paper bag. And there was that time when my new husband and I, before any children, went on a November day, post-season, and it was actually cold, with a true nip in the air, and Christmas decorations in the quiet shops. You need cold weather for apples to grow, you know, and it snows up there in New Peck most winters, but I never really knew that, only that it must be fall, because I finally had a caramel apple, and the trees were rustling all around us. Small red leaves on the ground, as I walked up a hill beside my grandpa, following painted yellow paw prints, excited to visit those dusty, dead animals one more time.
Love that. Thank you. Oh, Glen season, right? You know, we all know that snap and that smell in the air. 500 words. Flash. Yeah, it's kind of new to me. I haven't done this yet, but we're developing with Inlandia and we have more coming. But so interesting and so much. We now have Carlos Cruz coming up. And I'm going to read Carlos's bio. Carlos, you can go ahead and make your way to the front here. There he is. He's the one responsible for inspiring the graphic we use. Carlos is a PhD student in history at UC Riverside, where he is vice president of Underground Scholars Initiative, which focuses on helping formerly incarcerated students succeed in higher education. And there's a whole lot more. He does participate in the Tesoros de Cuentos workshop in Casablanca, facilitated by Frances J. Vasquez, who is here. You've already heard her. Frances, wave your hand so we know who you are. There you go. Yes, thank you and welcome. We're so glad you could be here today, Carlos.
Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Maybe a little more projection.
Do you need this?
Yes.
Do I need this?
Yes.
I'm just gonna read a couple paragraphs, because I know we're running out of time. This is it's on page 90 in the anthology if you want to follow. It's titled "The Story of Mary Hernandez as It Was Told to Me." It's about my grandmother. In 1946, when my grandmother was only 15 years old, she migrated from Mexico to the United States. Her name was Mary Cortez, but back then she most likely went by Maria. From the stories that have been passed on to me, I knew that she grew up extremely poor in Guadalajara, Jalisco. There were times when food was scarce and articles of clothing such as shoes were a luxury her family could not afford. I remember her retelling stories of how she would watch boys and girls her age walk to school. She would peek into the window of their classrooms to see what was going on and imagine being inside the class with them. From my understanding, school was not accessible to everyone in Mexico unless you had money. It was always her dream to be able to go to school. Even at such a young age, my grandmother knew the value of education. At the age of 15, my grandmother had an opportunity to leave Guadalajara and travel to the United States. Her older sister, Socorro, had somehow obtained papers to travel legally to the U.S. The details are unknown to me, but I do know that her sister was too scared to travel alone. In 1942, the U.S. and Mexican governments worked together to create the Braceros program. I can only speculate that this may have been the reason why she was able to obtain paperwork to travel to the U.S. At 15 years, she made the decision to use those papers, along with her sister's birth certificate, in order to travel all alone to the U.S. I can only imagine the courage it must have taken for her to get on that bus with no idea of what life would be like once she reached her destination. I think back to when my own daughter was 15 years old, and I couldn't imagine letting her walk to school alone. It must have been both an exciting and frightening experience for her, traveling all alone to a foreign country and not speaking a word of English. Once she crossed the border and departed the bus, she sat down on a bench next to a woman with a baby. She sat there relieved that she had made it to the U.S., but also unsure of how she would get to her uncle's house, who lived somewhere in Los Angeles. She had no money and no form of transportation. The woman with the baby was so preoccupied with everything that when her bus arrived, she grabbed her baby and rushed off to board the bus. My grandmother sat there wondering what to do next when she noticed that the woman had left something behind. It was a small coin purse with quite a bit of money inside. She quickly ran after the woman to give her the coin purse, but she was too late because the bus had already driven off. Every time my grandmother retold that story, she always made sure to mention that it was God's way of looking out for her as the reason why the woman left the money behind. Relieved that she would now be able to buy herself some food, she began to feel better about her situation. While purchasing food, she met a young couple who spoke Spanish. They had just arrived in the U.S. as well and were headed to Corona to stay with some relatives. My grandmother remembered them as good Christian people and felt safe enough to travel with them. She ended up living in Corona for some time and worked in the citrus fields. She even agreed to be baptized as a Christian, even though she had grown up her entire life as a Catholic, and most likely baptized as a baby. She always spoke fondly of the time she spent with that family. Those people might not have been blood relatives, but they treated her with kindness.
Yeah, I was there the day he first read it, and I had come to visit the Thesaurus workshop, and it just knocked my socks off. There's so much more to it. So read that in the anthology when you have a chance. Okay, this is Frances. I need you to come and help me introduce Dora. There she is, Dora Harmon. Can you read it from there or there? It's in Spanish. My Spanish is not okay.
Okay,
With this?
Okay. What I'm going to do is, her bio is in Spanish, and you can see it in the back part of the bios, but I'm going to try to translate this. Dora believes that her personality is that of faith. She is positive, and she is full of fortitude. She has lived great tragedies in her life, but she has learned to make lemonade out of lemons. She wrote a book. It's called El Insondable Mando del Poder de tu Mente. It has to do with the power of positive thinking. And she facilitates 2 clubs in Riverside, lecture clubs. And Dora participates in Tesoros de Cuentos creative writing workshop with me in Casablanca. Thank you, Dora.
Thank you.
I don't think I need a microphone. Can you hear me? Yes. Well, I'm sorry I did my job in Spanish. Even though I have been here for almost 50 years, because I'm 82 years old now. I don't write that good, and probably don't speak perfectly. That's why I prefer to do it in Spanish. Se llama el abuso del hombre hacia la mujer. Y quiero que se entienda que sé que no todos los hombres son de la calidad de los que voy a expresar en este momento. Mi nombre es Dora y por naturaleza soy amante de la justicia, y en medio de tantas y tantas injusticias como las que presenciamos todos los días y en todas partes del mundo, una de las que más me hace hervir la sangre es la injusticia contra las mujeres. Por ser mujer, y como la gran mayoría, he sufrido el abuso por parte del hombre, que por ser superior en fuerza física, su insaciable anhelo de poder y control, perversidad sexual y falta de sensibilidad y nobleza, las mujeres hemos sido víctimas usadas y abusadas desde épocas inmemoriales. Los registros más antiguos de estos abusos comenzaron con 2 de las instituciones más antiguas que aún sobreviven: la Santa Iglesia Católica Romana desde 2000 años y la musulmana desde hace 1400 años. Todas 2 creadas y dirigidas solo por hombres, han sido las religiones de todos, pero la mujer nunca ha tenido ni voz ni voto. Todo lo que se le permite hacer es escuchar y obedecer ciegamente los mandatos de sus superiores. Yo nací dentro de la Iglesia Católica y por eso conozco algunos de sus mandatos, como amar y obedecer a tu esposo, estar ahí en las buenas y en las malas, y si te pega y maltrata verbalmente, cada vez que se le antoja, sufrir con paciencia los designios de Dios y nunca dejarlos, porque lo que Dios ata, nadie lo desata. ¿Cómo es posible que Dios nos designe semejante infierno? Por este infame lavado de cerebro, millones de mujeres han sufrido los más horrendos abusos físicos y emocionales, y miles han muerto asesinadas por los hombres que ante Dios prometieron amarlas y cuidarlas hasta que la muerte las separe. Otro mandato: hay que tener todos los hijos que Dios mande. no a los anticonceptivos. Entonces, parejas pobrísimas, teniendo 10, 15 y más hijos, viviendo el infierno del hambre, la miseria, la enfermedad y la ignorancia, no al aborto. Y conozco a una mujer con 4 inválidos. ¿Y por qué 4? Porque tenía que obedecer las órdenes de no abortarlos. Tenía que sufrir con paciencia los designios de Dios. Y de paso, los 4 inválidos tienen que compartir el mismo infierno de la madre, tirados en una acera al sol o al agua, pidiendo limosnas para poder sobrevivir. También en el siglo XXI existe el salvajismo despiadado y cruel del abuso del hombre hacia la mujer, cuando en países como en Jordania, Turquía, Irán, Irak, Yemen y Pakistán, una mujer de la que el marido sospecha o se queja de las palizas del marido debe ser ejecutada para limpiar el honor de la familia. Tiene derecho de quemarla viva a su padre, su hermano, su cuñado, cualquier hombre de la familia. Cada año se registran más de 5.000 casos de crímenes de honor, porque los que no se registran son muchísimos más. Las mismas madres asesinan a sus hijos cuando los maridos no quieren hijas mujeres. No tenemos derecho. No, esto no lo quiero leer porque lo voy a tener mucho tiempo. Yo siempre creí que el amor de una madre para sus hijos era un lazo tan fuerte y sagrado que nadie podría romper. Pero al ver madres que son capaces de traer al mundo 10 o 15 hijos, aguantar hambre, dolor y miseria. Otras que los traen sabiendo que vienen con incapacidades físicas y mentales a vivir un verdadero infierno. Y las que son capaces de matar a sus hijas solo porque el marido no las quiere. Entonces me doy cuenta que el lavado de cerebro, las ideas sembradas desde nuestros primeros años de vida por las religiones y la idiosincrasia de nuestros lugares de nacimiento son más poderosas que cualquier otra cosa sobre la tierra. Las primeras enseñanzas que nos llegan son de nuestros padres y por ello lo tomamos como verdad absoluta. Y como nos enseñaron obediencia y respeto a nuestros padres y superiores, no teníamos derecho a pensar ni mucho menos a opinar.
Muchas gracias.
I wasn't able to read that even half of it.
Oh, not even half of it. So, the anthology and finish it up. Thank you so much. 2 more readers, and we are going to wrap up this year's event. All right, our next reader is Frances Vasquez, whom you've already heard from today. Frances is going to read from the anthology. She is a native of the Inland Empire and Director Emerita of Inlandia Institute. An aficionada of arts and letters, she is passionate about Chicano history, celebrating cultura and tesoros de cuentos. Thank you, Frances, for being here. There you go.
My story is about Sister Celine Vasquez, stellar guiding spirit full of grace. Sister Celine was a beloved paternal aunt and one of my early mentors whom I admired, loved, and respected. She stood up and worked for social justice and civil rights. She marched with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in support of the farm workers. My aunt was brilliant like the Stella Maris star and had a steadfast commitment to advocate for the poor and downtrodden. She was a gifted organizer and administrator. In about the mid-1930s, she joined the Sisters of Social Service, a Catholic community of religious women based in Los Angeles. She professed her vows at the age of 21. It's the custom of many women religious orders to forego material wealth and personal assets. And she changed her given baptismal name, Maria Brigida, to Celine as her forever religious name. The sisters worked in the community as social workers with poor and marginalized people. Because of her impressive intelligence and talents, the Superior General sent her to attend Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where she earned bachelor's and master's degrees, probably in about the early 1940s. Brigida, as she was called in her youth, was my father's sister and one of 6 children. She was born in 1916 in High Grove, California, a small unincorporated enclave east of Riverside. Brigida was a builder. She built up people's lives, skills, and moral characters, and she literally built furniture at the school she attended in High Grove. As an adolescent, I looked to Sister Celine for answers to personal questions I had about religion and Catholic doctrine. I trusted and appreciated that she was wise, knowledgeable, and non-judgmental. Her answers were direct, honest, and resonant. Why are women not allowed to be priests? I recall her explanation that it was not God's divine law, but papal doctrine. Why, I asked, are priests not allowed to marry? Again, papal doctrine, not divine law. For a time, Sister Celine was head of Catholic Youth Organization in Los Angeles. During Easter break, when I was about 16 years old, my aunt took me to Los Angeles for an enriching opportunity to do volunteer work at the CYO office during doing minor tasks. I stayed at Stella Maris, a beautiful Victorian room and board residence for young career women that the sisters operated. I ate my meals and slept there. While interning at CYO, I observed my aunt's astute leadership expertise and marveled at how efficiently and effectively she managed the office. The last time I saw Sister Celine was at a family gathering in High Grove. She was on vacation from her duties in Mexico to help her sibling, Aunt Virginia, with the student exchange program that my aunt had founded. Sister Celine's eyes gleamed as she spoke excitedly about her imminent retirement. She was looking forward to taking classes at Marymount College. At the time, I was about to begin graduate school at UCR, and we discussed the theories of famous social scientists. I remember feeling impressed and immensely proud of my aunt's desire for continued lifelong learning. In 1963, our family suffered a horrific heartbreak. Our 2 beloved aunts, Sister Celine and Aunt Virginia, were tragically killed in an automobile accident in Idaho. They had been visiting prospective host families for the program's approaching arrival of students from Guatemala. We were devastated. The deaths of our beautiful aunts shocked us and changed the trajectory of my life at many levels. Sister Celine is an incredible component of our Vasquez family legacy. I want my children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and their grandchildren to learn that they're descended from strong, brave, resilient people. Our ancestors were refugees of war who fled a brutal Mexican Revolution from Michoacan to live and work in Southern California to provide a better life for their family. Their descendants must know from where and from whom they came from. Please read the entire story on page 258. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Frances. All right, well, Dick, what a wonderful afternoon of language and ideas and stories and sharing. I love what we put together here. Our final reader is Cindy Neisinger. She's going to be reading from the Anthology. Cindy is writing a memoir called My Life Between a Tortilla and White Bread. Her children's book, Mouse Wedding at the Inn. I'm going to read that again. Mouse Wedding at the Inn is sold exclusively at the Mission and Museum in Riverside. Yay! Published book. Thank you.
here because I have a bad knee. The other one.
Okay.
Anyways,
Gosh.
sorry for the wrong knee. I'll hurry up because I'm hungry. I don't know about you. Okay, I don't know if I'll get through this. This story was inspired by the many things I'm finding in my elderly mother's closet. I'm her caregiver. I'm going to try the microphone. Oh,
Yeah.
She's 91, and this story is inspired by a picture I found and some history I dug up. It's called La Reina de Beaumont. The warm milk with a sprinkle of cinnamon and an egg, the whole egg, including the yellow yolk and its attached white string mojito swirled in my cup. My great-grandmother Viviana Aldaco called it un ponche. The eggnog-like, delicious, nourishing recipe was passed down through the generations, originating in Mexico on my mother's side of the family. It was handed to the children in our family before they ran out the door to school. This cozy drink was served in a random mug with a dash of love and a connection to the past. Whenever I smell cinnamon, it brings back memories. In 1912, great-grandmother Viviana lived in Beaumont, California, an unofficial Mexican community called Champa. It was a long way out from her ancestral home in Guanajuato, Mexico. I found her picture in a box in my mother's closet. On the back, it was dated April 1912 in Beaumont, California. I looked her up on the 1920 U.S. Census. Yes, she was there. But why? In those days, Beaumont was a community of agricultural pickers and packers. Like Riverside had its oranges, Beaumont had apricots. The 10 freeway had not yet been built. There were still horses more than cars. It was our migration history and a stepping stone into the land of milk and honey, el otro lado. People didn't have much, but they had familia. They worked hard in the fields and packing farms. For fun, they would go to a festival once a month. It meant bringing a pail of savory frijoles refried in lard and a bag of fresh handmade brown speckled flour tortillas to eat throughout the day. A full day of fun on the Morongo Indian Reservation, welcomed by the Cajira Indian tribe. It was a long walk, but worth it. Great-grandmother Viviana, I wish I had more information about how you ended up in Los Angeles, where my mother was born. I see you in this picture like a queen with her court. Any concerns or anxiety about this new land are hidden in your regal smile. As children and family are gathered around you, including my grandmother Isabel, you look content and happy. Your daughter, my grandmother Isabel Gutierrez, bought a small neighborhood market and a home in Los Angeles in the 1940s. I see how you imparted so much fragility, common sense, and wisdom on her. My mom says she could can every fruit and vegetable from her garden. A deep cleaning was done on Saturdays. All drawers were emptied and organized. Outside weeds were plucked and the grass was mowed. And the yard was raked of leaves, especially around the fruit trees and the regal magnolias. My mom says even the dirt was cleared of rocks and debris. It was called tierra limpia, or clean dirt. The ripple of prosperity is still felt and seen through 6 generations. My mother, Dorita, opened a beauty shop with her inheritance, which paid off her 1-acre home in Riverside. I bought my first home with the encouragement and help of a down payment from my mother, and I paid it off. The trickle down of prosperity will probably end there because houses are too expensive now. Today we are keeping the acre of land in the family. This is all because of you, my dearest great-grandmother. I see in this picture, it's in the book, how you cared about your appearance, and the girls had beautiful bows in their hairs. I see your hair is coiffed in stylish finger waves. I can almost feel the stiff, freshly starched iron dress material. I remember my mother ironing her clothes with a damp rag, hot steam forcing the wrinkles to comply. We always had an ironing board set up in our homes. Did you know, great-grandmother, that you gave us the love of music? I know my grandmother played the piano and my mother too. To this day, I can hear my mother and see her hands quickly glide across the keys, pounding a boogie-woogie and simultaneously using the foot pedal. She loved to play your song called Un Marinero, a joyous tune. I want you to know that although you prayed the rosary every night with your children, 2 generations on their knees, 2 generations sitting on the bed,
That's 4 generations times 10 fingers each, having slid across the holy rosary wreath. That's a lot of prayers. So many prayers and grace from the generations past to the future. It will probably end with me, the last of the Catholics, and last to pray the rosary. So sorry, great-grandmother. I imagine hearing your voice, something like the blended voices of my tias, Helen, Patty, Mary, and my mother, Dorita. A low, unexcited tone, hardly no inflection, soft, calm, and sweet. Like in your picture, your eyes, that smile says it all. Live, love, laugh. I feel your essence in the flicker of candles we light in your honor on Dia de los Muertos. I hear you in the Ave Maria song that has been sung and played for generations. It resonates and echoes off the walls of the Catholic churches for many weddings and funerals. I feel you in the traditions, recipes, and even when I eat a sweet, juicy, orange-brown, freckled apricot. Great grandmother Viviana, I see you in this photograph I found. La Reina de Goma from 1912.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you all for sharing, for being here, for writing and believing in the power of language and stories. We're glad to have you. If you're interested in taking a class with Lindia, a workshop, you can register online. If you do participate in a workshop, you are eligible to submit and be published in the anthology. And you're also all are eligible to submit to the online journal as well. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you again for coming. Katie, is there anything we need to know? Katie, is there anything we need to know about books?
Buy one?
That's it. Buy one. Orders from headquarters. Okay. Yes. Yes. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays.